And Joe sent us some today. I didn't have.
So we didn't get to ask questions with regards to your previous meeting. We're just going immediately to the public hearing, which was scheduled for 8 o'clock.
No, it's scheduled for 7.
Okay.
So do you want to review what you have for definitions?
What I would like to do, since this is a public hearing, is to kind of give people a little bit of a background, so we know what we're talking about.
Copies of that, just so you know.
Okay. Just really by accident, I found out that...
Excuse me.
Please.
You two are going to continue to talk while he's talking. You have to be quiet because it's too disruptive.
I found out quite by accident that our codes have to match up with state codes. They can't be more restrictive, they can't be less restrictive, which is surprising to me. I always thought that, you know, the villages, that's why you're an incorporated village, you have your own rules and whatever. And in fact, I was told by this one attorney who happens to be a personal friend of mine, he said, you can get certain permissions to change things, but you have to literally seek and get permission from the state. And you know, there's a justification. An example would be if our building code says, you know, you need a foundation of a certain thickness, but you're on the coast, and or the state says it only has to be like this, but as a village you say, well, we need it to be like this because of the high tide and the surf or something like that. You can do it, you get permission. But our code, in a million different ways, does not conform to the state. So, you know, one of the things that came up just for myself was over building permits and structures and whatever. And even within the word structure, our own building code differs from the town of Brookhaven's, from New York State. And that affects every one of us in the sense that we need to not only bring it into conformance, but it gives us a chance to review. If those of you who might remember, 2 years ago, we had a meeting, an open meeting, where we had a pretty good discussion about the changes in the requirements for building permits and that issue of replacement in kind. And, well, it turns out the state also changed. There's no such thing as replacement in kind. And that was a big thing for the village of Poquott, because so many of the structures in Poquott were built during the summer. You know, they were kind of put up lightly, like bungalows and whatever. And we already have it somewhere in our code that anything that was non-conforming, if it's rebuilt, has to conform. But then there are sections in the code that says, actually, you don't have to. So there's to go through this page by page is a nightmare, and I'm certainly not volunteering to do it. But I just thought that we could have this, and somebody asked, well, where's the written proposal about what we want to change the wording to? And there is none at this point, because the question is, well, what are we going to do about how we go about saying you need to fill out a permit and it's going to cost you so much? And the issue that I raised at the last meeting was, for some houses in Poquott, the older houses, if we get a permit for something that heretofore we didn't do, that building permit not only will cost money, or should, I suppose, but it gets sent over by the village of Poquott to the town of Brookhaven. And my own personal experience was when my wife went down to Brookhaven Town Hall for business, she pulled the file on our property, and there was none. Why? Because it was never sent over. Our records are right here in the village of Poquott. And we were just talking, there's a lot of houses where there's no record of anything, anywhere. Why is that important? Because if you have somebody getting a permit from the village of Poquott down at Brookhaven Town Hall, and they have no record, they review it and they say, oh, you have this? Oh, you have that? Well, you're going to be reassessed. So everybody should know it. We also don't want to have people fill out a building permit if it's really not an important structure, and that gets into the definition of structure. So an example would be, Lee, you and I were talking, somebody puts a little garden arbor up in the corner of their backyard. Is that a structure? If you have an outside stairway on the deck, is that a structure? Well, we can have a good discussion. I have some feelings about it, because I would say the average person who puts up a garden arbor does not consider it a structure. And right now, our definition of structure, however we word it, and if you have this handout, you can see that there's so many different ways. A shed is not it's defined as a structure, but then it's not, a permit isn't required, so that's an inconsistency. I would say that without sampling everybody in the room, we would probably all agree that a shed that's conforming, which is to say it's set back from the side, from the property line by, what did we say it was, 3 feet?
2 feet.
2 feet. And then under the maximum, which by the way, our codes are out of date. Our maximum is 100 square feet, 10 by 10. The state has changed it to 12 by 12. So 144 square feet would now be the maximum that you could build a shed. And we always had it where you didn't need a permit. So we could do that. We could also say that a structure has to be supporting something. And if it supports something, then it really should be built to code, because it could not hold up whatever it is supposed to hold up. So a roof over a porch from one of the old bungalows had 2x4 rafters every 23 inches, and it's already starting to have that sag to it. You're not walking up there, hopefully, but it could collapse in the snow. And if you rebuild it, it should conform and have regular rafters every 16 inches, and it'll hold people up, or hold the roof up. Stairs, right now, most stairs are under 100 square feet. And so we say that any structure is under 100 square feet. We can change that to include the sheds and whatever, and say it's 144.
Who's the we? When you say we, who's the we?
The we is the village code. The village code says that it's under
So
100.
you think that if stairs are under 100 square feet, it's not a structure? Where does it say that in the code, that if stairs are not a structure if it's less than 100 square feet?
No, I said that most stairs are not 100 square feet, so therefore it wouldn't be a structure, because we say that a structure is over 100 square feet. What?
I don't understand where you,
Okay,
I think you jump going back and forth.
okay, well, should I say it again?
No, I understood. I had heard what you said.
Okay, so stairs, let's say you have an outside
I just
deck.
don't want it, I don't want it to be brought, anybody to leave thinking that if stairs are less than 100 square feet, that they're not a structure, because I would always advise the village that that's not the case.
Well, but I don't think it's formalized in our code, and I would agree with you, but I don't think it's in there. And that's why I think that we need to really rewrite that. We have to define structure a little bit better than everybody would agree with it, and then say that certain things, such as the stairs, that's under 100 or 144 square feet, it's still a structure because it supports people going down, and you don't want it to collapse. So they need a permit. Now, we may say for certain things we just want to check to make sure that it's okay, and maybe we wouldn't even charge for it. Clearly, if you're going to have electrical work and plumbing work, it requires a permit, and yeah, we do charge for that. We have to have a building inspector, and there's time to go out and check it. But stairs, right now, under 100 square feet is not a structure. It's not a structure, it doesn't require a building permit. And yet I think everybody would agree it should be done correctly so that it doesn't.
But I'm sorry, I didn't want to have a debate, but I always thought that it was 3 steps or less was not a structure. I don't think that stairs goes by, with all due respect, I don't know that
Then
stairs.
at the very least, if you're right, and I didn't read every chapter and verse in the code, but if you're right, then there's an inconsistency in the definition of the word structure. So we would at least have to correct that.
Okay.
So what I'm hoping is that we're going to have some agreement here, and then we'll go write it up and put it out there. Okay? That's the introduction. I'm fine. Long.
So what you're looking to do is define what a structure is?
That's step one.
Okay. So is that what we want to take comments on now?
Yeah, and anything else that I said.
So there's just one thing I'd like to add to the discussion. One of the things that we managed to do here is we started this discussion at the time that the code changed. So the state code that trustee Jeff was referring to has actually just recently changed, and the state code is now not the state code anymore. It's now what's called the international code. And even though it was adopted in relatively recently in 2016, it's referred to as the International Code of 2015. So the code that's the Supreme Code in New York State right now is the International Code, and then with the New York State supplement. So if you go online now and you look at if you type in existing building code of New York State or building code of New York State, what pops up is a header that says International Code. And that's actually the International Code with what's called the New York State Supplement. So now there's twice as many books as before. But that's the International Code. It's relatively the same, but it has some differences. So one of the differences is in the definition. So that since the last meeting, these International Code books came out. I started seeing these in villages. So that sort of is an overlay over the process that we're trying to do. But the International Code is out now. And it's something that we have to also take into account.
So when I went online to get, for example, the definition of structure, what was I getting? Was I getting the new one or the old one?
If you did it within the last few weeks, you were getting. If you did it like at the last meeting, you might have gotten the old one. But if you did it within the last few weeks, you probably got the International Code with the New York supplement to the International Code.
Wow. Thank you. Happy reading. Anybody have anything to say about any of this?
So is there, if there is a New York State code, is there a reason that the village needs to have code that is separate from that? Would we lose anything by having our code just say that we adopt the New York State supplement code?
No, you're actually required, and that's one of the things that I was going to mention, was that we're actually required to adopt, state that we're adopting, and now we're actually adopting the International Code. So the language has to be that we're adopting the International Code with the New York State supplement.
Right.
And, but however, as I said before, there is a, what's called the Model Building Code. So we're going back and forth talking, some things that we're talking about are zoning, and other things that we're talking about are actual building code.
Right.
So like a building code is what kind of things need a building permit, how long a building permit lasts for, which is one of the other things I want to talk about tonight. The zoning code is what a property can be used for and things like that. So we really should have a chapter which is the building code, and New York State Department of State has what's called a model building code that they require you to have the building code. And they have a model, what's called a model building code, that they request you to adopt. So that's one of the things that we should look at.
So the short answer, Diana, was that we really don't have a lot of wiggle room. That as far as the building code, we really could just adopt the state. I mean, that was my question.
Well, we have to adopt the state.
Right, so for us to go and rephrase things and reinvent the wheel is just, it's a waste, because we can't go more restrictive, we can't go less restrictive. This is what we have to follow.
Right.
That's easy.
For building, but then there's zoning. For zoning, there's some of the definitions that we have are zoning definitions that are not included in the state codes, so, such as the definition of a family. You know, things like that. Those are the things that we need to work on. Those are not in state code, it's in local code.
Okay. Sarah.
Are you taking the question? I'm confused. This was advertised in the legal notices in the local paper as a public hearing, and that propositions to the change to the building code would be available at the village hall during office hours. Many of us have tried to get the proposals from village hall, and they are not available. we were told by the clerk, I believe, that this was not really a public hearing, it was to get input into some propositions. None of us have seen any of this since we walked in the door. My understanding of a public hearing is that if this is a true public hearing, one, we should have had input at the same time, and two, that you may have the right to change the laws at this public hearing, if you can vote to do that. And I'm confused, is this a public hearing or isn't it?
She's, I agree with her, because it's not, you don't have the right to change the law.
Yeah, but I don't
This
think
is
we're
a-
going to, we're just.
What happened was, just as I tried to explain, the law actually has been changing since we set the public hearing, and we really couldn't be at a point where we could adopt a code, we could adopt anything, or even put anything out for consideration, because we have to figure out what the state wants us to do now, because the state code has actually changed. And so I think that the feeling was to accept public comments tonight and have an open discussion, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think the feeling was you wanted to see how people felt about
Yeah.
the definition structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'd like to say, allow me to get this off my chest. That we need to dial it down a little bit. I know it's election season, I know there's been news bouncing off everything, whatever. This was an opportunity for us to have people come down here and to weigh in on an issue that I think it affects all of us, regarding our houses and the way that you go about improving your houses and permits and clarifying the code regarding terms such as structure. So we do not have anything that we would be presenting as a potential law. It was never that, okay? Whether you might take a legalistic thing and say that's not fair, 24 hours, whatever, it was never intended to be that. It's a chance for us as neighbors and residents to have some input in something that we're going to have to, at some point, attend to. So we just want to dial it down a little bit, and you're welcome to join the discussion.
Public hearing.
Are you quarreling with the word term?
The mayor should announce that this is not a public hearing and it's just a session to take input from the residents about possible changes.
I think I said, public hearing at the Village Code, Chapter 183-6 definition.
No, it's not a public hearing, that's the point.
Public input, I said.
They can keep yelling.
Yeah, I know, it's not gonna change, we're not gonna change.
Your objection is noted, and again, I would just ask you to just calm down, dial it down, and just join in the discussion.
We'll be happy to, but just.
So one of the things that I
acknowledge
wanted to
it's
talk
not
about
public.
is,
It's not a public hearing.
section 183.18. If I could talk about two sections,
Okay. I don't know if you can, because everyone else is
see if there's
talking.
any comment, is that 183.18 regarding building.
You people have to stop talking.
You can hear 'em.
There's two sections there's a couple of sections that I recommend that we change right away while we're, not tonight, but as in the future, in the near future, which is that one that we recognize that we're adopting the international code with the New York supplement. The second is, we have a section 183.18 called building permits, which has several sections involving building permits. The first thing is that it has to be changed to reflect the 144 square feet. Right now it says 100 square feet, so we should make that change. And then also, it refers to this indirectly, but I think it's important to refer to it directly, that you cannot have an accessory building on a building lot unless the principal building is also on the building lot. So you can't buy a piece of property and put a garage on it, as an example, or a big shed, storage shed. But it has to be on the same lot as the house. So that's one thing another thing that has to be changed. But the second thing is in C, we have duration of building permits, but it doesn't say actually the duration of a building permit that I can see. It says that a building, you have to substantially complete the work within 1 year, but it doesn't say, unless I'm mistaken, it doesn't say that the building permit is 1 year. So what I recommend that we do is we change the duration to make it so that a building permit is for 1 year, and a building permit can be renewed for one additional year. and then it expires. And that, but also, we can also say that the building, we can leave in this provision that the construction has to be substantially completed within 1 year. But then if it's not complete, then they have to get a renewal, right, which I'm proposing is $100.
That's more than that.
Or
Oh, using an additional fee?
it's a second, renewal.
On the renewal, we charge the same as the original.
We charge the
It's in
same,
the code.
okay, so we'll charge the same as the
It
renewal.
was in the code, it is in the code, yeah.
It is in the code. Okay, so we'll check that. But, okay, so we're good with that. I'll talk to Joe about that. But I think in this C where it says duration, it has to be changed, so it says that the building permit is whatever determined the building permit is.
Okay.
The other thing is that there's the next section of the code has to do with, I think it's 183.19, which says that the village clerk issues permits and certificates of occupancy. And with all due respect to Joe Newfield, under the state law, only the building inspector can issue
Well, Cindy does it, really.
those documents. So it has to be somebody in the building department.
Okay.
So we should make that change.
Those were the changes that you sent over?
Yes.
to look at? Okay. Hey, do you want to get back to the infrastructure?